So the questions are no surprise for the jurors, just for your information. They know this, but I don't know what they're going to answer. And I'm going to ask first, Fabrizio, since you're unmuted. Did you see certain aspects of developer portals coming more into focus as opposed to a couple of years ago developer portals?
Well, first of all, hi everyone. Thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be here, and I love this virtual gala thing with the tables and all. That's great. To answer your question, Laura, well, I see two interesting trends going on. One is well, this has been going on for a while, but I think there's a constant search for a more cohesive experience in the sense that developer portals often started out as just uh, disconnected reference documentation and guides, very often with different look and feel because they relied on different tools, for example, for building the static output. And I'm very pleased this year to see so many developer portals really striving at maintaining a cohesive experience throughout. Not just in terms of things like colors, for example, fonts, but even down to the UI elements for user interaction, for example, voice and tone. That's really a nice trend to see. And the second thing that I see growing, though not at the level that I would love to, is localization and internationalization. And that is also on the rise. We tend to forget sometimes that users come from many different countries, and software used to be localized a lot in the 80s and the 90s, and somehow we seem to have forgotten a bit of that along the way. But now it's taking up again, and I've seen some very good efforts in embracing internationalization in developer portals recently, and among our competitors and contestants. And yeah, so those are the trends I'm seeing.
Chris, how do you think about this? What aspects do you see coming more into focus recently?
Yeah, thanks. And I'd also like to say thank you so much for having me as a jurist, and it's been a great honor, and it's been really great to see all of the work that's out there. I think the trend that I'm seeing that I'm liking is that the dev portal has been becoming very practical and hands-on and focused, with lots of emphasis on the getting started experience, the time to wow, if you'll excuse the cliche. But it's one of those things that seems obvious, but it's really easier said than done. Really deciding what elements to focus on, what to present to the user in order to get them on board and actually doing something with your product. It's a challenge, and when we've seen it work on the sites that were presented to us, it really did work, and it made a huge difference. So I really just think that the emphasis on the practical and the hands-on has been a great trend to see.
Thank you. And Koichi?
Yeah, actually, I was going to say something similar. Onboarding, bringing the developer into the full experience of the service, bringing things into context is a lot more important these days than just providing documentation and tools. The overall experience and clearly some emphasis on time to wow rather than time to hello world, which I think over the last couple of years we've seen get a bit hacked, I would say, as a shortcut to providing value. But yeah, these days much more focus around context and education for the developer to be useful.
And if I may turn this around, which I really like doing, is there aspects or parts of developer portals that keep lingering on? Fabrizio?
Well, that's a good question. In general, I would I would love the Stripe syndrome to go away. In the sense of everybody loves Stripe docs. We want to have Stripe docs, and I think we are in a good moment to leave that complex, inferiority complex behind. I think and explore other ways of doing API documentation specifically. Um, I think there's lots of room for innovation, and instead of just trading behind the thought leader in the sector, that is perhaps the thing that I would gladly leave behind next year.
Let me surprise Koichi. What do you think, Koichi?
Yeah, I was gonna say the diversity around how you get to whatever you want to call it, the endpoint information, or I like the healthy creativity that's going on these days. It is not just Stripe or Swagger. I think there are a little more creative things going on, and I think that's only going to increase going forward. So yeah, the days of everybody copycatting, I think there's a lot of room for experimentation, especially around obviously code gen and AI tools to really change the interface and how you communicate and how you gain knowledge around other services. So I think that's going to be interesting, and seems to be already going in that direction.
And authors, do you have some strong feelings about certain things that you'd rather not see too much anymore?
I don't have strong feelings about anything, but the one thing, and this may seem very superficial, but I think it is a bit indicative of a wider sort of thing that I would kind of like to see be left behind, is animated scrolling. I know this is, like I said, this is probably superficial, but it does feel like something that where we've sort of put the cart before the horse, and I do think that the form needs to follow the function, right? And the functionality of a docs site is to give us information. And so when I'm clicking through a site, I really don't want to interact with like something that tends to be kind of buggy, and watch the thing scroll, and take a minute. And I mean, I can understand why people have added these, because it looks cool, but it's not practical, and it does annoy me. So I hope my PSA is this very superficial minor thing, to maybe stop animating the scroll. Just let us scroll, and if you click something, don't animate down. Just teleport to that zone.
So you're not opinionated, right?
I have no opinions whatsoever, but yes, on that one thing.
Right. And don't mute yet here. So I'm going to ask you first. Were there surprising novelties that you have seen? And I'm going to couple that to the bonus question. If this was science fiction, what would you like to see? If you rip away the context of what's possible, just the function.
Right. I think one thing that we were seeing a lot, in a good way, was these recipes, or again, not to just repeat myself, but we would have really specific hands-on things that you could follow to really get started, and that I think was great to see. And they would be very, like I said, they were specific use cases. It wasn't just general getting started with a thing. It would be like how to integrate with a specific third-party service or something like that. I don't think that everybody should spend all their time making those things, but when you do have them, it is nice to have. So that was a nice sort of thing to see. As far as the science fiction, I think it's not really that far off, honestly, but with the advent of the large language model, natural language processing, AI, and all that stuff, I think we are on a bit of maybe a watershed or a cusp of a new way of interacting with the documentation. If done tastefully and correctly, I think that there's a way to have the way that we lay out information become more dynamic and answer users' questions, dynamically according to what they sort of want to know by using some of the LLM things that are coming up. But again, trying to keep it tasteful and just recognizing that AI has a specific use and purpose and limitations. But I really think that is sort of the direction that things are going to go at some point. So really, it's not that science fiction-y, but yeah, maybe it is. I don't know. I'm thinking of in Star Trek, you just ask the computer to do stuff for you rather than really fiddling with a lot of knobs and reading. You never see people on Star Trek reading documentation. They're always they already know how to do things. Anyway, so yeah, that's sort of where I'd go with that.
You also don't see them waiting for the ads before they get the answer.
Right, exactly.
Fabrizio, what do you think about science fiction?
Oh, I love science fiction. I mean, in terms of surprising novel approaches, I really enjoyed seeing more interactivity in their portals. Like like here's a snippet of code, you can run it. In some cases, you could even run the snippet of code within the product, right? And that I think is the wow moment, the wow effect that sometimes we are seeking in products, and it's nice to see it in developer portals as well. Bringing that idea a bit far into science fiction, I don't know if it will make sense, but I kind of wish that products could be their own developer portal. And by this, I mean that users could somehow, and it's interesting because it kind of connects with Chris's idea of not having to read documentation that much, which is kind of a contradiction when it comes to developer portals. But if the developer portal, if the product, could be taken apart into pieces, into sub-applications that users could repurpose, connect, reorder, rearrange them in new configurations as they saw fit. And that would be, I think, a very interesting direction. Not necessarily no code or low code approaches. There are also some developments there, but I'm still thinking, that I love retro computing and reading all the manuals, and I still remember, when you used to be able to rearrange UIs in the way you wanted in desktop applications. You could have the panels the way you wanted. You could change the shortcuts. You could rearrange the applications in whatever configuration you wanted. And with web and mobile applications, I think that kind of went away. As the user experience seems to be way more controlled. It would be lovely to see that coming back somehow, so that people could it should be more playful. I think developing something should feel a bit more like doing some Lego construction rather than pulling a number of API endpoints using curl one after another. But that's totally science fiction. That's you asked me and I came up with this fantasy.
I wonder how we could make APIs tactile. It's a bit okay. And products. Koichi, what do you think? Are there new novel approaches to how you see thinking about APIs, and how would the Star Trek DevPortals look like?
Yeah, I think that's going to be for the next year's gala and going forward. This year we didn't see too much of it, but definitely tools around writing working code and getting to productivity sooner rather than later. Another thing I think found interesting, and some of them were really inspirational. I don't know if you really call them stories or incentives around using the service or API in areas that I wouldn't have found myself being interested in when I first went to that dev portal. but the approach was so engaging that it really kind of motivated me to try out whatever it was, even though, I may not have been interested there. So I think motivation and gaining interest around the services for potential developers that you may not have targeted before, for some of these services could be pretty interesting also.
Thank you. Is there any remarks that I didn't lead you towards with a question, but you would like to add? Okay. After saying it's so much work to be a juror, would you give some encouragement to future jurors? Why is this worth it to put in so much time? Is it?
Yeah, I mean, I had a great time doing it for sure. It's, as we discussed in our jury, it's rare to be able to kind of nerd out on such specific stuff. When you're doing it day in and day out, besides your own team, you don't really get to interact with other people doing it in the space, unless you're a consultant or something. But yeah, I thought that was cool for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, you learn so much just by looking deeply at other approaches with a not entirely involved eye, in the sense that it's different when you're doing some benchmarking, maybe on your company, looking at competitors and so on. But the variety of sectors covered by these awards were so refreshing. Like I never worked, for example, in the car industry, and looking at their approaches to things is so refreshing and different. So it's a great learning experience.
Yeah, I'd really encourage anybody who's interested to try doing this, because it's fun. Surprisingly, it is nice to be involved in a community in the industry, rather than we can be very siloed. We can do our own thing and only see what's in front of us. But it's great to see what's out there in a structured way, and to try to give back in that way. Yeah, like I said, it was genuinely a lot of fun. I really enjoyed my sub team conversations, and we all brought the right amount of passion. There was no, it wasn't, annoying in any way. I really just enjoyed doing it. So I would really encourage people to reach out to Laura for next year if you can.
Thank you for this.